joining us tonight.
Yep.
And so we'll kind of go through some deer hair stuff. And I like tying deer hair. And so I'm going to spin tonight. And if you want stacking, you got to course Les to get on the call and he can do stacking and stuff. But I'll kind of talk through the principles of. Oh, I got to okay that it's being recorded. But I'm going to go through pretty much as far as what you look for in deer hair when we talk about it, the shapes that it makes, and different things too. And let me switch over if I can find my camera. Switch over and go this direction on the close-up job. And so when we talk about deer hair, and a lot of times it's kind of we think of big fancy things. So here's the board. You guys can kind of see. I did a couple of them that I'm gonna go ahead and sculpt later after we get going too. But here is, where's my rat? There's my rat. Kind of a rat. So you got all kinds of things that you can do with deer hair. Some of them are more fun. I have a bat, but I couldn't find him. I have a couple other ones too. So you can get as creative as we get closer to the holidays and things like this. Sometimes it's just fun to tie some up. I've seen everything from turkeys to Christmas trees. It's a process as far as getting the deer hair onto the hook shank, which is what we're always talking about. And then you also have where you can actually pack it all the way in very, very tight. You almost can't see any air between this one. And then when we get to some more standard kind of classics, knowing how to spin hair is a fundamental process to not make it as frustrating as it can be if you get more into. So here's one of my little crazy mice. So again, this is all deer hair, and you know, he's so cute. That's why he hasn't gotten fished. And then you have some that got the heck beat out of them. Don't know what it was, but man, this guy got torn up. Sorry, it didn't start like this. But it did have some different, it had some shape that I was playing with. And then we also have our group that typically goes to Missouri Veterans Home or will do a lot of displays. We have safety pins. And so it's just actually spun deer hair, a lot of times in the red, white, and blue. And then you can see how meticulous it is on the pack. So it's in tight. You can't even see hardly the individual, but even here they added on the little eyes. When you get more into the streamer side, and kind of creating different things. So spinning deer hair is essential when you're making some bigger streamer flies too. So it's the process of that to not have where you're hating deer hair is kind of the point on that, especially as you get into, again, some bigger, more on the shape of it and what this does to finish out and how that behaves in the water then. So it gives you a different idea that spinning deer hair is not just for, and my hummingbirds are upstairs, and we had, oh, I keep wanting to say Sergeant Bass Fisher, but you guys know. So he was, I'm drawing a blank. But we had him on, and you know, he does all kinds of sculpting. He's done everything from Yukon Cornelius all the way through a T-Rex. So deer hair is kind of one of those where, again, it's a necessary evil to understand how it works. So on my hook right now, I just have just a small hook because I'm going to go through some principles, and I'm actually not even going to finish this one out. But what I'm going to show you is when we talk about different things and adding in collars. So a collar would be more of the larger style on the back of your streamer. And what happens is that people try to continue to use that front part. Well, it doesn't work for that. You want only the lie back. And it would be very similar to your caddis style. So again, as we were talking, if you guys just jumped on with, Terry had his gar this weekend, 2 of them on a captain. So a little bit more, you know, just in the traditional style. And then I had a gar on a regular, well, it's a yellow Sally one that I tie. So it has a red back and yellow thorax. But it's just made like a standard classic caddis style. So your deer hair comes in a lot of different varieties. You can buy little tiny packs, which I usually tend to kind of ditch, or they go to the bottom. But here would give you kind of an idea, as you can buy them in little sections as well. And generally it ranges anywhere from, you know, maybe $3. It'll go up from there So these, which is a primo, and it's about 14 bucks for a long strip. And with this part of it, I can tie to my heart's content, and it's still, so this one's about a year, well, not even that much, but I use it for a lot of the caddis styles. The principle is almost the same when you're tying in a collar, and then I'll move over in a couple of the samples that I already set up. But with this part of it too, so with your deer hair, and you can see I have a few primo strips. I love them. I think it's one of those things where it's kind of a go-to. When you go into a shop and you see different ones too, and you're kind of like, well, what is that? What am I looking for? It'll be specifically labeled as far as deer hair. If you try to buy it online, this, see, I can't even get it on. So this is what you'll get like online if you're just trying to do Amazon. This is the time that I don't recommend trying to buy things through Amazon. This thing came and it looked like it had been run over by, now this is moose, but it won't, I can't even, with steaming it and everything, I can't even to get it to unfold. So as you're going into shops, or if you're looking, I would definitely recommend, and you're looking for primo strips. They're usually anywhere from, again, 14, 15 bucks per, and it'll give you a lot to work with. And then they come in all different. So you have more of their natural style colors. And then you can go into anything kind of the greens, kind of, again, more natural on that. The other thing with deer hair is it depends a lot on when it was harvested. And when we talk about that, and I read a funny comment on the social in regards to, talking about dead stuff. Well, I'm pretty sure they're not regrowing it. So yeah, we're talking about dead things. But when it's harvested at certain times of the year, that underfur, and so it all looks like just cotton almost. I mean, it's even less than dubbing, but it comes under here. So if this was a winter harvest, it's obviously going to have a lot more thick. My one and only dog, and I'll probably never replace it, but I had a Malamute, and I had to brush it every single day because all that under hair, which is keeping them dry and warm and everything. Well, that's the same as any winter animal that spends all the time outside. So you get all this under hair. Under hair has no purpose in fly time. So it's something where you have to actually prep your material. So one of the things with prepping are tools of how we can do that. So you guys have seen this before. It's in the pet section. You can find them at Walmart or any pet store too. You can go through, and pretty much what you're trying to do is grab some of the underfur. And what this does is it cleans about the first 1/4 inch that I'll be working with, so that it makes it a little bit, now it doesn't go all the way through. I can't get all the way back here and actually do any good, but it'll work for what I'm doing right now, and it'll keep it fairly clean. You can also use, this one's a golf cleaning, I think a spike cleaner or something. So you can come in, and what you're trying to do as you're getting that, and you can see a little bit of the fuzz is starting to grab. But you're trying to clean this because, again, the underfur doesn't have any purpose on what we're doing. So I'm going to tie up. I'm not even going to add any dubbing. I'm just going to show this process on here. And tonight I've got black Vivus on tonight. I know I put in my list that you could use Kevlar if you want to, if you're really heavy-handed on your vise and you don't want to get into a bunch of broken thread, which can happen on some of this, then that would definitely be a way to go. But I'm not going to add any dubbing. By the way, when you adjust your light for these videos and then you use black thread, first off, I know John Wright is in Colorado Springs right now, but you actually can't see your thread. So you guys can be my critics. So I'm just going to get my thread started on here. And to show you on a caddis wing and understanding the principle on a deer hair. So I'm going to use the strip that I typically use. So elk hair caddis, I rarely ever, if ever, use elk. I like deer. I like what it flares. I like the way it processes and sets on there. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to clear cut. So I'm going to come in as close as I can to the hide, and I'm going to get a section of that I want. And I just use the scissors that I have in hand, so I'm not having to move this around. Then you come in and you're kind of just clearing out the ones that just aren't going to make it to the party. I'm going to roll that in my fingers now. I'm going to come back in, see if I can grab any more of that underfur, which again, I brushed out quite a bit, so you're hardly seeing any in there. You can also use at that point, again, any kind of tool. A lot of people will use combs. I've read mixed reviews like on the bone combs that you actually have, you know, and different things too. So then I've got my stacker, and this is by far my all-time favorite because of deer hair with this. So it gives me a wide enough channel that I can reach in. I've talked before in the winter time and in St. Louis, so we get a lot of dry air, a lot of static and things like that. So if you do not want this to get static, because we don't want this like the Tom Twister thing or whatever. We don't want all the hair sticking to the inside of the channel, but handy little promo for bounce. You can take the little strips like this, cut them in smaller strips like this. I've talked about doing deer hair before, and I actually spray my hands in the winter with Static Guard. And so it is something where you can go inside the channel in this, because I don't want any static on the inside of my stacker. That's not where I want the static. The static can be on my hands because that'll help separate things. But as far as the actual care, so I've taken that, and again, you can get an entire year out of that. So I've got just a small section on this. You could definitely go bigger. It's all uneven. It doesn't have any form to it. It's all uneven on this end. The point of the stacker is I'm going to drop it in the channel, and this is obnoxious. There's no quiet place to do that. So what I'm doing is I'm getting all the points to go to the very bottom here. If you hold this then horizontally and pull it, your tips are out on the end. So I can grab those. I just come in with one single pinch. I don't want to move these around a lot. I'm going to keep moving them, but I'm going to come in with one pinch. I got one little random one. I'm going to measure the length on that. I'm going to come in now, cover with my finger. And you guys have seen me tie caddis a lot. It's one of my most favorite. So I hear a lot of times, well, my hands are too big. I can't do this. Well, luckily, if you can roll the pads of your fingers forward, that's the trick on handling deer hair too. So I'm going to roll the pads forward, going to come in. I'm going to cut right at my fingers. Nothing there. Now I roll back a little bit, and I've got a little bit of a head exposed here. And I've got my thread lined up here. I'm going to come in. I'm going to wrap over the top. I flare it, makes that great little dandelion head, and I'm done. That's my caddis. The wing came out perfectly. I have no more scissor work to do on this front portion of it. I can come in right now because I don't want anything to jump on me. So I might put a little half hitch in just to keep everything in the right position. And then I can also come in and add legs now because I want the two separated. If the legs fall off, then great, I've still got hair, vice versa. But it keeps everything kind of positioned as you build as you go. So that gives you more of an idea of what we're going to do with the deer hair. And now I'll get to the big stuff. And so then, yep, I always use the whip finisher, finish it off, bring it in, turn it over. And I want to make sure that if I had anything that rolled when I wasn't paying attention, I can come in now and I can clean that up. So it keeps the same profile. And again, pretty easy starter in regards to trying to figure out what you're doing with deer hair. And you can start this on a bigger size. One of the ones that I don't have out at all is multi-layers of this. So you actually start with tail, you build an underwing, and then you just keep going up. But it's always the same process. And that way, again, you're not having to come in and like recut and shape and everything. Very quick fly to tie. So next, we'll go to some big stuff. So we talked about hooks last week, and I was showing the Walmart, and you can do those. Aberdeen's okay for some. We used this last week on the hopper, and the difference that I want to show you right here is look at that bend in here and the play. I mean, right? It's all over the place. So if I'm actually going to attach deer hair on that, I want to go for a little bit more sturdy. So I'm going to put this guy in, and hardly, not nearly the same as far as the play. So these are partridge. On this one, just for the length on it, I have the 1/0 on the partridge. And with any kind of and we're trying to simulate more of a popper style or a diver. So you have very close deer hair packed, but you also have a lot going on in the caboose. So you have a lot of action going on at the back. So you can have more like a popper style does. You can have some feathers in the back. You can have flash in the back. So again, for kind of some contrast on this, and then as I get in, I'm just going to lay some things on here. And so you can get kind of an idea. I talk a lot about profile. So I'm laying my thread on, come in, cut that. And right now I'm just going to use kind of more of this. So I'm going about the length. I don't want to have this where it's like the whole feather back here, because what I'll do is it'll tip it upright. And so all of a sudden it's way out of the water. This gets weighted down. And the other part is it just doesn't throw right. So it's all about proportions as well. So I'm going to come in with my marabou. It's a little bit about the length. This stuff's really wispy. And while I'm on the water, if I need to adjust, I want to cut from these. I want to be able to come in and cut them out and make it shorter on the water instead of having to deal with like more thick. That's why I leave a little bit of those wispies on the end. Sometimes, you know, we see that definitely on woolly buggers where you're just trying to see what they're chasing. And then you pull it up, and after 2 misses, then you work on the tail a little bit. So on my marabou, I'm gonna just lay it right on top. All of the positioning is exactly the same. My fingers are actually, I can feel that I'm holding the hook. Come over, my positioning on here, gonna do another wrap. Now I'm gonna cinch it in. That kept it from rolling. I talked about that last week, that when you start too fast on the foam, and especially for new tires, if I were to do this, it's all the way on the side. So instead, I want to do a positioning wrap up and over, just kind of giving a lasso, snug it into place. That thing's not going anywhere. And I can add a couple more in just for bonus. With your marabou, if you twist it a little bit like this, it'll wedge when you cut it, and it lays down a little bit more. I want to conserve as much space as I can because I don't want it too bulky in the places where it shouldn't be bulky. So here, I can lay it flat. It's nice and on there. And I'm going to add in a little bit of flash. I love crystal flash. It has a little bit of grab to it, and the way it catches the light and things like that too. I like the iridescent. I think it adds to almost any color, and it plays off of that. So I'm going to come in. I'm going to grab a chunk of this, and that's pretty exaggerated. These flies are extremely exaggerated, so you can go crazy with some bigger materials. I've got a hunk in here. And I'm going to come up, and I'm laying this on my side. So it's exactly on my 45 right at me. I'm going to come in, same thing, going to position it because I don't want to roll it. Clear that out of the way. Clear the other one out of the way. And now I'm going to pick up this crystal flash, and I'm going to come up and over. And now I'm going to grab it on that side. So there's very little movement. You're not having to try to attach and attach and attach. You take one long strip, and now I've got what I want. In regards to, you know, the flash is on there, it's not going to go. And then I can come back in later and trim that for the length that I want. You could add in feathers on the same to add a little bit of that tail movement on the back. And again, we're looking for the eye-catching part of it. So now, because this is what you guys tuned into. So now we're going to do some deer hair. And just to give you an example, so I've kind of cleaned up some as far as the white. And what I'm going to do with this is show some different colors and just kind of lay it in there. So one of the things also is you can see, if I kind of go real close, it's very kinked. It has kind of a pattern to it. And this one's all white, so it's bleached, and it has no definition to that. But if you look at some others, when you're tying, and you can see same, it's got that kinked, and then it gives that great line going across the top. The one thing is please don't try to do spun deer hair with bucktail. Doesn't work. The other thing is don't try to do this with moose, and I'll show you why in a minute. It actually breaks when you bend it. So I think a lot of times too, it comes to shopping and what you're looking for. So I kind of spin it in my hands, come out. On this first one, I'm going to stack it so that it actually creates kind of just a little wing back or keeps everything in place. Again, I've got static in my fingers already. And so you can see some of it keeps wanting to stick to my hands. If I do this in the winter time, I actually have it like everywhere. but because I've treated my stacker here, it's not going to stick to the inside there. Do my tap. And again, if you're wanting to do this, you'll annoy everybody. But you actually want to bang that so that they separate and they all end up kind of at the same length. So here I can grab this. I'm just going to grab it with my finger. Same thing that I just did with that caddis. So I'm going to figure out the length that I want, and I want this just to flare a little bit. What I want it to do is not have all this material come up. So it's actually going to work more like a cap. I'm going to switch my finger here so that I get out of that bad habit of trying to use this material here and try to force it to go back. I'm just going to cut that. You guys are jealous of my fly tying room. I can tell that because I can just drop it on the floor. So I've got it pinched in here. We talk about like spinning, and this isn't a nervous habit that tires do. This is actually something that has a purpose. And so as you come up, if you've spun, and it depends on which way your spool's in. I know people go clockwise, counterclockwise. Well, that if you're talking to a lefty, that doesn't really register, right? So first off, you're going to have to try it, figure out which way to spin. And as you come up, I want the thread to go towards my hand as opposed to hopping towards the hook eye. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to make that great little dandelion right there. And I'm just going to keep on pushing it right through because I'm not spinning yet at this point. I'm just mashing it. I just want all that deer hair as close as I can to the hook shank. So it's on, and that gives that little back section of it. So here, and again, just pressing it down because the further I get away from the hook shank, the least effective your clumps of hair are. So that's why I'm pulling it in tight. This has a lot of tension on this fly and mini streamers. You're going to be using more and more. So now we're going to go into, and I have a couple different little samples.
Amy, while you're looking for your next material, can you explain why the deer hair flared versus rolling around the hook, just for in the event that somebody watches the video and has that question, you know, what caused or prevented it from rolling and spinning around the hook versus kind of doing that flared cap, if you will, the wing?
It's literally it's holding on to, so I'm on the hook shank. I've got everything pinched in my fingers, and it's very similar to what you do with marabou, because you don't want that marabou to jump as well. So I've got everything pinched in, and my fingertips, I could actually, if the vise was open, I would be pulling out the entire hook shank. And so that's something too, as far as what you do with your non-dominant hand plays a lot to it. On this one, now that it's in place, I can kind of mush it out, you know, and make it a better, I'll turn that a little bit. So now it's kind of that wing. And yet on the bottom side, which is kind of messy, oops, I just knocked you guys. You can see nothing came around the bottom, and all that has to do is just with where your finger is on there. So now on this next part, and I'm just kind of, I don't know why, but I keep adding more, and it's not for tension. It's just actually for my thread placement of where I want it. That OCD is coming out. So I have another color in here, and this will show in good contrast next to the white on. And so I've got another strip on the lighter ones. And I've talked about this before, so I don't have a very long attention span for what's what. But I label all of mine, and you'll see even some of the other ones when I start getting them out, but they're, you know, where it says moose on here or moose mane. I recommend that. I keep things in plastic tubs so I don't keep them. I don't have to take this out, then put it back in a plastic. I just keep them all. But this is another deer hair, smaller patch. And so this is, you know, pretty much how it bought. But when I looked at it, I was like, yep, that's what I want. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to grab another section of this, and there's no rhyme or reason. It's kind of comfortable. I mean, a lot of people make reference as far as, you know, the size that you're trying to grab, but it's not really, it's going to be more trial and error, quite honestly. And so here I've grabbed out a section. It looks like that. Some people say a pencil, but I don't, again, it's up to you. Open it up in your hand. So a little bit of flare, pull out that under fur. And on this section, because I'm going to spin this right now, I don't need to stack it. So I'm pretty much done. Once I'm cleaned, once it comes through, I can go with the little brush and do that. I can come through with the bigger, but I'm not going to, I don't have to put it in the stacker again. You can if you want to, but it really has absolutely zero purpose. So now I'm coming in, and we've talked about this. I don't know if Jim Stanley's on or not, but we've talked about this because on these hooks, you will bleed. There is no way around it. So I don't want you guys to get in trouble if you steal some earring backs from your wives. I'm not saying to go do that. Please don't take it as that. But you can, and you can actually come right in and you can cover on here, and it will help protect your fingers. Okay. So you can add something on there. And I've destroyed every pen and pencil in my house because of just trying to cover these pinpoints. Otherwise, as you start working in this, and you can't see as much, so you will bleed. So there's solutions to that too. But anyway, back to the deer hair. So I don't have it all leveled out. It's not, I've got a lot of different things in here. With my deer hair, again, it's positioning on your hands. And now it's a matter of kind of your brain talking to your hands. But I'm going to come over the top. I'm going to make a crease in there, and I'm going to see a flare happen. I don't like that portion, but just 1 second. I'm going to make a crease. It's going to start to flare. I'm going to go on the next one, and on my third or my second and a half spin, I'm going to let go with the backhand. And this one, of course, dang it, I will tell you, I practiced this like 7 times even before. Hang on, let's go back to the white again. Intermission. I don't know who is blowing up my phone, but my text has not stopped since I sat down. So hopefully somebody didn't get locked out of the call or something. All right, so I'm going to clean this one. Again, just real quick clean. It's already good. I'm going to put this on, coming up over the top. Now you can see that flare. So that's loop 1. I've come over 1 time. I'm back towards myself. I'm going to come the second time. On my third one, I'm going to let go with the back finger, and you're actually going to see that go all the way around the hook shank. And then I can come back in and just kind of blow through there. You're not doing any, you're not mashing down anything. So you've got your spin on. Now the next part is, because you want to keep working in front of this pile all the way up. So there's a lot of tools. You can go spend, 20 something bucks on tools. Our regular bodkin, that it doesn't fit, right? So something that we might use on a smaller one. So you can get some of these, and if you like to use them, great. There's others. There's one called a Fugly. There's a lot of different ones. What we're trying to do is get that mashed on as well as we can, back to the back. And the other thing is, you can take apart pins. So like I said, I've destroyed many a pin in my house trying to get this, but I'm trying to get this all the way out of the way, collect as much as I can. And now I'm going to hop my thread in front of that. And I'm not creating a dam on there. I'm just got 3 wraps, but it'll stay out of the way some. As you start, there's a lot of different techniques. Some people use a cut straw to hold all this back. The other thing is that you can also come in kind of with these little clips if you have longer, and it'll hold it back out of the way, because sometimes all of this is very distracting as you're first starting to tie this. We're going to come in, and again, my green didn't do what I wanted it to do, but I'm going to come in more on this beige or just the camel color, cut another section. And now all I'm doing is building it. So when we've done game changers before, and all the time that you take building game changers, it's because you're just layering. So same process over and over, flare it out. I don't have to stack it. I've already brushed it some, so I'm not unhappy with the underfare in here. Come in, I'm going to lay it right on top. You're kind of working it back. 1 wrap over and get it to flare a little bit. I'm trying to get my thread to disappear. Next wrap around, and then your third wrap, and you're actually going to spin that. And that one didn't spin as nicely as I wanted, but I would still keep on working it. Come back in, push it back out of the way. Make sure your fingers are clear from that big hook underneath. Come in. And again, it's not a thread dam. It's usually have your numbers that you're working with. If you're doing 3 wraps in front, 5 wraps in back, whatever it is, but kind of keep that number. Otherwise you'll just keep on wrapping. And so this is the process. You just keep on going all the way up. Let's go back and we'll do the white again so it can show some variation. It's exactly the same. They're actually kind of more, you get so much of a mess and you look around and go, what have I been doing for the last 2 hours? So pull out the same. Again, you can brush it if you want to.
Now, Amy, while you're stacking this, I hate to be the guy that keeps interrupting you. I do have one more question for those that want to. Now, this has been absolutely awesome for the techniques. What about if we wanted to add a separate color on top of another color? You know how you see some frogs and stuff that are
Yep.
Spun with additional colors. Would you demonstrate that as well if you could?
Yep. And so
Awesome.
I've got one wrap around on this one. And let's just take that exactly what Mike was just saying. And so I've got a stack that I pulled out. And so that's my good size of white that I want. And I want to come in with something in a contrast. And so this is where you start seeing it on the divers,
Right.
especially when you start getting those really packed in. And we'll put it on the red, and actually it'll help, it'll show you know, kind of the movement on here. So this one has a lot of under fur in it. I'm going to clean it pretty well and clean that out. And what I'm going to do is take kind of a half of that, and I'm going to lay that in on the white, Mike. And so you can do it a couple different ways. You can build it in on. So I've got the red right on top. And there are some people that are way, you know, just crazy good at this. And some of the divers like Les has done and stuff. Yeah.
They
but he
get
has a whole,
pretty intense.
oh yeah. And that's the difference between spinning, where you're actually making it go around the hook shank, and then also
Right.
stacking on there too. So on here, so I've got the same white that I had, the red's on top, and I'm going to come in. Okay. I'm creasing it. You start getting that dandelion look. That's my first one. And that's just your anchor. Second wrap. Your third wrap is when I'm letting go, and that's when you start spinning it. So you're able to get a little bit more detail on there. And that one didn't spin the way I wanted it to, but again, you get kind of the idea. When you do it perfectly, and I swear I will get one before we're done, because that's how all the practices went today. I was just like, dang, I haven't spun deer hair in a long time. And I was actually really pleased with them. So but you can continue to do that. And so now you can layer in all your colors. If you want green on one side, if you want, and you can rotate that through. Let's get a good one going here. I've got the red left still that I just cleaned. So I'm going to put that on, and just a little section of it. And let's see if this, and they're actually not hard. It's more of that you almost feel like so there you got your dandelion kind of starting to wrap around. So now that it flared out on that side too. So it gives more of that kind of that look. That way, as you're shaping it or sculpting it, it'll actually have that really bold color to it too. Let me go back to my green one, because that one did really well before today. But it's more a matter of trial and error, and like anything in art. So you first start out and you're like, oh, that doesn't look the way I want it to. Keep at it, at least to just see the process. And then when we start to get to that part where you're able to come in and cut it, that's where the shapes come into play. And so on this, again, I'm going to come in. I've got it. I'm just burying my thread enough. Come through again, my second one. Now my third one, there was a good spin. So you can actually see it go all the way around. A lot has to do with tension. If you go too tight on there, you're going to just end up, you're stacking here. You're not spinning it. So there, I got it in play. It's good. That red's kind of, you know, back behind. I'm going to smash this back because I'm packing it in. I want this as tight as I possibly can get it back there, but without breaking the fibers on here. So now we'll come back in on the white and see if you can see the contrast on it. Sometimes, again, I think also when we start and we think, oh, we need the biggest chunk possible, because you don't tie these all at once. So layering them in. So again, same process. You guys are going to be like, oh, okay. come in, I've got it on top. I've got all the other ones pulled out of the way. And this is exactly where, so on all this, and it would start driving me nuts to have it come in. These are just at the dollar store, little kids clips or whatever. Pull it back out of the way, makes it a little bit more manageable. Again, the straws, I've never had super luck with that, but you can slide just a straw that you've cut in there and you can slide it over there. I find with the deer hair, it just wants to keep popping off, so it becomes more annoying. These little clips, yeah, it's a jackpot. So on this one, and I'll be able to get my positioning in. Again, you're kind of working around everything. Come in. I'm going to put that on just so I see that flare, but I'm not cranking down on this. Next one comes around. Now, my third one is the spin. So that's the one that will make it go all the way around. And you can just go through again 2 or 3 times. It's like when you apply hackle, you don't have to be, I know some people, and I move mine back and forth, but you're not going to mash down any of the fibers on here. So you can come back in then, clean it up. This is all stacking is just figuring out, and it's the tension on that. But I think some of the times, as far as getting too hard on, and then, or you're just kind of like, well, it's all gonna work. But here you can see I don't have any air gaps. So I'm going to go ahead and just finish this. I'm just going to tie this one off and show you kind of more on the sculpting part of it, because I think that's where the fun actually comes. On this, again, if you wanted to continue out, obviously go just shy of your hook eye. I would stay back at least 1 hook eye back, because it's just easier for you to see it, but you can go all the way up and almost over it like you would on a hopper. But I'm going to go ahead and finish this out. After each, on your feathers and things like that too, as a new tire, what the heck, you got a whip finisher. Go ahead, and that way you don't lose everything. If you accidentally were to cut something, you haven't lost. Dude, that was really bad. You haven't lost the whole hook. It's not destroyed in regards to all your fibers and things like that. So I come in, and now the fun part of it, which I always like with everything, is kind of that finishing part. So I did another one here. This guy looks, kind of dandelion-ish look. And we talk about, so you could take scissors to this. You could take scissors to this all day long if you wanted to. It's a little bit tedious, and then you're going to wear it everywhere. The other thing is, and when you first go in to get double-edged razors, people are going to look at you like, what era are you from? But you can find them at Walgreens or anything. You just have to look a little bit. And so you can use your double edge. I don't have a tool that I use on this. And one of the things is that, yes, they are razors. So you want to be careful with them. I don't recommend using these at class. Just have folks use scissors. So when you're doing that, you're not getting in trouble with your VA or anything else for taking razor blades on. But at home, pretty much it's going to be kind of a simple, I'm coming in, I can bend it in my fingers. And there's tools that actually you can clamp it in there and you can bend it. But you're just going to come in. And on this part of it, as you're carving this, you can't put it back on. So start off, get a good shape that you like, and then on something like this, gosh, I'd almost, you're almost pretty much done. Well, here it impedes on the gap. So instead, I'm going to come in on this, and this creates kind of that hopper. So you just go straight in the gap, and it creates that flat. Then you can come back in and you can cut. And if you have any ones that are straggling or you're not happy with them, you can either cut them with your scissors or cut them with your razor blades. But again, these are flexible. I have never had one that just popped and broke on me. But I also have a great respect, and that it's like a lot of our other tools. You don't just reach in there and pick it up. When we talked about hoppers last week, you just don't reach in there. Look what you're doing. So that gives you an idea, again, of kind of a popper. This one does not have the tail on it, just has a collar. It'd be great for bass here. And I won't show you what my table looks like, because I'm not kidding. These are messy. Some people, have a basket underneath or a trash can, but you can see now how it almost looks like it's like fabric. how that just stays on there as far as the spin. Again, red and white, that's a good spring color in our area. Playing in the weeds, you could almost get something coming out just hitting this just because it hits so fast and they don't have any idea. Kind of still has a profile as far as buggy. It's buggy enough to get some bass to play. So
Maybe.
that would be, yep.
On the machine, I have the little tool that you put the blade in.
Yep.
And it really spreads it. They're about $20 for the tool.
And I've used one before, and it's one of those where it's I think if you know, the big thing is staying away from scissors, because you know, you can imagine if you're doing this the whole time. So this is one that I started, and I'm gonna actually set that one aside. I'll go back to the one I was just working on, and even though it's not, you know, it's just crazy, right? You could set this aside and you can come back to it, and then you could kind of finish it up. So if it's not really, throw it in the little bin where you're like, oh, I'll come back to it sometime, and then come back and you can finish out the head on here. You don't have to do these all at one time. And so on here, again, I'm going to come through and imagine if this was, I was thinking about using a shorter hook, and I thought, well, this gives actually a better display. So same thing, I'm going to come in and I want this profile. So you do all this work, and then you come in and you really kind of slim it down some, but you can shape this to whatever way you want. And I really think that on a lot of these divers, it's just sculpture. I mean, it's just really, but what I like with this is that as I turn it, so you can see that brown goes to white, has that little bit of red, a little bit more in the brown, and it still has a little bit of color to it. So it still gives that flare where I want. On my bottom section, I want that a little bit more shaped, kind of again in a natural area. But if I were doing this with scissors, yeah, I mean, an hour later, and then just like a bad haircut, but you cut off more than what you wanted to cut off. These little stragglers, you know, do I want them on there? No. Do I need to pull out the razor? No. But this would be where the advantages of tying in a few whip finish knots, or just even some half hitches as you're going. Because if you accidentally cut the thread right here that we buried this one in, then you've still got everything else behind it preserved. So it's kind of a good first practice that as you get used to these, just once you get done with one color, whip finish it in, keep on going. But you can see again how that layers out, and then you could build the head. And this one, obviously I went pretty far down on here as far as shape, but it gives you an idea. Now, when you cast this in, the deer hair is going to help as far as the buoyancy. I've got a heavy hook on here too. So yes, it will stay. You can put some finishes on here, whether or not you like UV, some of the different things too. I've actually not been disappointed with just using this and some watershed and treating my flies. Then they still have some durability, but they don't have that sheen to them too. And you'll probably get, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 bass out of one of them. So it's worth the time. It just really depends on how hard you are in your own flies, getting them caught in trees and things like that, which we had a lot of tree experiences yesterday. You know, and so it's just a matter of what you want it to look like. And then as you practice, you can make them much more with stripes and things like that. Here is kind of back to this one, which I was doing earlier. It just, the creature appeared. So sorry if you see somebody. Yes, here's the daughter.
Can't see myself.
No, because I'm on my camera. They can't see you either.
Oh, they can't?
No,
Okay.
Well, they can only see you.
Hi,
if you're down.
Taylor.
Hey, you.
Hello.
August 30th.
So by the way, my daughter just did her MEPS today.
That's
August
all.
30th. August 30th is when she leaves. So we've had a little emotional, but I'm going to go ahead and spin deer hair. So if you didn't figure out on the first couple, if you didn't figure out why I was, yeah, there's Les.
Hi, Les.
If you didn't figure out why I was cranking the hell out of my thread earlier, I'm trying to listen to everything upstairs, and I'm like, okay, I got 5 more minutes for you guys. But no, yeah, happy day for us. Yeah. She worked darn hard for it. So
bye, everybody.
anyway, so that was the creature, even though you guys couldn't see the creature. I'm gonna go back to my tying now. And yeah, it was a process. But anyway, pretty cool. And man, when it's real, isn't it, guys?
Oh yeah.
That's what I know. It's like, whew.
My oldest son did that about 2 years ago, Amy, and yeah, it puts things in perspective, and makes you think for sure.
Well, and it's been a long she's always wanted to do it, so I'm
Well, that's awesome. She's you should be proud. I think she's made a really good and honorable decision. I think we all would.
Well, except for Les thinks she should have gone Marines, but other than that, she's Army girl.
Air Force, Air Force.
Oh, she's Army. Paperwork's done, Terry. You can't talk her into Air Force.
Well, what's she doing? Megan had to ask.
Medic stuff. Well, we haven't actually gone through all of it, but that, and then
Okay.
also they asked her to do some special stuff, and then also in the K9. So
Awesome.
Yep. So she's got a few options, but she's gonna enjoy it.
Terry, the Air Force wouldn't be able to handle her.
Well, that's probably true, but I don't know about the Marines either.
You guys already know that's a given, right? So yeah, but a good day. It was a long day. She goes back Wednesday, Thursday to do the
Awesome.
overnight thing. She just has the physical. All right, so back to spinning deer hair, folks, because
Sorry.
that's what we're gonna do, right? No, I'm good. I'm glad to share. I'm glad to share it with you guys. Of course, I am very proud. So I've got one chunk of the white on here, and I've pulled it down enough where my thread's starting to disappear. That's my first loop. Gonna go on my second one. My next pass through is when I let go of everything, and
Beautiful.
that's the spin. Okay, so it comes all the way around, and that was the one that I just picked up. And so you can, get these to a certain point, drop it, leave it, come back to it. Not all of them. If you sit here and just keep doing this over and over, it gets meh. You either better have some really good music on or something. But it is something where, especially when, like what Mike was asking about the divers and things like that. And I think that's a little bit more on the stacking, which would be how you would do a collar. So if I don't want it to move, and then you're going to pinch it, and you're going to actually hold it, and you don't let it move. On the other one, it's a difference on in place, next one, and then a tight wrap.
Now, Amy,
and
when
that's
you
what
when
makes
you
it spin.
pull that hair and you put tension on it to spin it, do you point the thread or the bobbin in a particular position that makes it easier for you, that may be beneficial for others to know?
With down would be mine. I mean, as far as width, I always cinch in everything down towards my table, so directly perpendicular to the hook shank. I find, I'm okay with when I hold things, and if I actually cinch in towards me or at a 45 degree towards me, I'm good. I mean, my stuff won't spin just because I've got the other hand on it. But I think for people trying to learn how to do this, I would recommend either, well, first off, down is the preferred. If you go up, you're out of comfort, right? If you go up with that, it's going to be a completely different motion. It's fine, it'll still work, but I think it's just a matter.
For
Yeah,
me, I've
matter of what-
learned that it's more personal preference. I like to pull toward my chest straight back to me.
Yep.
So I'm able to put more tension and it tends to spin better. But like you said earlier, it's really personal preference. It comes down to how much time you spend, practicing this. Where some say pencil, widths, you just get so used to it that you don't even think about it. You just grab the appropriate amount.
Well, and a lot of times, so you have pencils, and I don't know what kind of pencils you guys use, but I mean, if you're using mechanical pencils, the one thing is, I think, is just like flash or dubbing. When we put that out on a table, and it's one of those things where people can't they just think, oh, I need more. And you can put a pack of dubbing out, and next thing you look over, and they've used the entire dubbing on their thread. So some of the times when you're trying to describe how much to take, small is the best way to learn this, because if you get too much hair and you're trying to torque that too much, you're going to end up with broken threads, and it's not going to spin the way you want. So that's where I would go pencil or less,
Right.
as far as the amount of materials. But that's the thing is sometimes, and especially learning out, and you just think, oh, well, I'm trying to make that finished fly, and they don't understand it's like building, it's like stacking blocks. You're actually creating the shape. So on this one, I did that first one. I'm going to come back through again. And on this is now when I can let go with my finger, and it got a spin. Again, not the best spin on that, but it did okay. But you can see again where it doesn't matter if it's lined up or not, with your tip. So again, no more stacker. The stacker is only for that back section. I'm going to go ahead and finish this one out, and go ahead again and show kind of a little bit more on the shaping. But it's just a process. And the fun part with all of these, don't like that. The fun process with this is you can make them any crazy color stripe you want. So again, around Thanksgiving, you'll see these in turkeys, you'll see them in Christmas trees. It's just, so you would go, and this would be the trunk of your tree, and then you would shape, so this would stay wide, and you go all the way up to your tip up here, and that's the fine point of your tree. There's so many different things you can do with it. The part where it is really fun is actually when you take, the scissors to it, and you can start shaping that in. Again, I've got, when we say, tie with purpose or tie it in there, that's, you're putting some torque on here. That's where I switched up that hook too. That other one would have been bouncing all over the place. So again, I can come in with the scissors to give you kind of an example. So here, I mean, really, it's what work, you're not ever going to be happy with it. And then it's going to end up as that really just bad, like, oh, well, this shape isn't this. Trust the razor blade when you start coming in. And again, come in, get clear. Oh, that was, I'm gonna say, wait, grab the wrong one. New razor blades work much better. Come in, get your cut, and it's one movement. You can see again how that you kind of shape it a little bit, but it's one. And talking to it sometimes helps. Just for those of you who talk to yourselves, coming around again, clumps all over the place. These are messy. If you're tying in your dining room, yeah, you better have that vacuum ready. So it is something where it's all, you're just covered with it. Come over, and I'm gonna rotate my vise in here because I don't want to, kind of eye it from this part of it. So I just rotate it over. I want to come in with a nice flat, just open up that gap, make sure I've got a gap that can catch a fish in here. And it also helps with the placement when you're throwing it on the water. So it doesn't have that torpedo look to it. So there you go. And you can see again, as far as you can do all kinds of crazy
Jamie,
things with it. Yep.
I put a weed guard on mine.
You
with,
can, absolutely. Yep. Tie in a big old 20-pound mono and have it run from there. You can do a lot of different things on that part too. I don't know. I have some mono.
Black and yellow bumblebee.
Yep.
Yeah,
And that's, again, when you look at all the different color options on here, the big thing, as you're looking through, like this one's really smooth. And I've said this before, and I've heard you guys kind of snicker. Some of them are really, really smooth, like it's conditioner in your hair. So they're almost too slick, basically. So it is something where as you're feeling the different ones, this one has a little bit more, it's a little bit more rough, and it does always spin well. So as many caddis as I do, this is why I go to the deer hair. When I get to some of like the elk hairs and things like that, they're extremely fine. They're really, really smooth for something on the bigger size too. And I use elk hair. I don't have any, it's not like I don't like it. This one shows you a great with the line in there and how high quality, except look at this. It's a nightmare to clean this because every single one of them I'm cleaning out, and it's worse than anything that would ever go through on my dryer lint.
I honestly believe, Amy, that when it comes to selection, when you're tying flies, I think deer hair is one of those materials where you're better off putting it in your hands, because we each know what we particularly like. But But you're right. You'll see some that looks, I mean, just absolutely beautiful, high quality, and it'll be so dense with the underfur, and the underfur makes it where you can't spin it. So if that's your intent, it's one of those things you really need to put your hands on it.
Yeah. And I actually go for more of a coarse feel on there too. Now, some of them I have, and this thing, oh my gosh, I don't even know. I haven't made too much of a dent in it too. This thing is, it just feels like it just doesn't have any, it's coarse. It's something where it's really like you can go the other way and it's like a real, it's thick, but it has very, very little underfur to it. And it has the great little play. So it has all those little, kind of angled sections. So I love that part of it because that's actually what plays into as far as the hollow. And then I talked about before, and one of the things you guys have heard me say is because I didn't know what some materials do and what they don't do. So I'm going to show you on this real quick, because some things can be interchanged. Like we were just talking about with elk hair. And if you don't want to use elk hair on your caddis, use deer hair and things like that. So this one, I'll show you what this kind of does. And then I'm going to put on another example. So great, because if you're going in a new shopper, well, this has everything she was talking about, right? It has all the wiggly lines. It looks like it's been crimped, a little bit dark here. Doesn't have a really good line to it. But if I put this on and you'll see just with this thread tension, so I come through, and it flares. So I know it does what I want it to do on there, but it doesn't have the body to it. So it almost does nothing to it. It's more of kind of, definitely use it for other things. I end up using it more for legs, because you can bend it and you can crimp it and see, there you go. You have kind of those flying like a caddis, or if you wanted to add, on the crane flies, and I'm not talking about the other. And then this one, where did I go with that? So moose mane is the other one. And I didn't know. And I'm like, okay, we'll try it out. So moose mane, again, I'm thinking, ooh, I'm the shopper, right? Because I'm looking for the little crimp part of it. And I'm thinking this will work. And for some reason it was probably cheaper, a little bit cheaper. I don't know, who knows. So on this, same thing. But the problem is when I bend this almost wants to break. You can see how brittle it got. So if I go to try to tie this on, and oftentimes, and I don't think it'll do it on this, but it might give me the flare, but it will break off after the first couple fish, because as you start, kind of getting more wear on it, gets wet and things like that, it doesn't have the durability that deer hair does. But again, it makes some great accents if you want a little bit, kind of coming over and making more of that wing case on the back. That's where I would start playing with the other materials and, kind of creating that profile, something that's going to, make the fish think they're hungry. So, well, that is what I have on deer hair. I didn't do your rat for you, but I think you guys got a pretty good idea.
Those are great resources and tools. Though the techniques were, probably better served doing that than a rat. You really covered a lot of the fundamentals, which a lot of tires, especially here in the Knoxville program, when they tune in and watch these videos, these are the things that they're wanting to see.
Well, and it's all trial and error. And I think that's a fun part too, is that the more you know what your materials will do as you're building your fly, then you can go, okay, could I, and a lot of times too, I mean, you don't have to have a room that looks like this, but what can you sub to do something else without going to break the bank? And you don't have things that you're like, okay, well, I'm never going to use this. So how do you find different materials? And especially you see this on a lot of things. So you start out and you're kind of like, well, I have to have peacock curl. Well, what else works for that? Dubbing. What else works for that? It does a thread work? Can you use a different, different sort of material on there? It doesn't have to be peacock curl. I find peacock curl is extremely annoying to work with, quite frankly. But that would just be me. It's not my go-to choice. I would rather dub anything than use peacock curl, quite frankly. But that's, again, knowing how to use the different things. I talked about, my kitchen counter and all the different fly containers. And so even these, they would work their way upstairs, throw them in there, come back, see what they're doing. Did they sink? Did they float? What are the principles? and how does it look from underneath? Because I think we forget, we're looking at it from our flat perception on this. Best advice I got, turn your vise around. What's it look like? Can you see that gap underneath? Especially when you start getting to some of these, like this little crooked guy, and he's been beat up. So don't have any judgment on it. But here, spun in deer hair. I got some wings in here, got some legs, but when I turn it over, that's the profile that I'm going for. The outside shape is just what that shadow does on the water. But this is what I want to be kind of the showcase of the fly. The rest of it's just dressing. So that's my 2 cents. All right, I'm going to bail, guys. I'm going to eat dinner. So sorry, it's that time. So I appreciate everybody. Any suggestions? Mike, you're out of the loop because you already suggested for this week. Anybody have any suggestions for next week?
Hey,
Roger's not
give Taylor my undying appreciation for her decision. And I would love to be involved with a party to send her off.
Well, you know how big that party's going to be because I'm such a partier, Terry. It'll probably be, three of us. So, but I will pass that on to her. So I appreciate the offer. No, I'm thinking, yeah, the party that I have will be, proud mom tears and Kleenex. So we might just FaceTime y'all and then let you experience that. So, but no, I appreciate that. And yeah, you guys have watched the journey, the 6 years I've been involved. Punk to bigger punk to creature to now it's real. So it's pretty awesome. Jim Stanley, nice to see you tonight.
Yep, made it finally.
I know you did. So what do you have any? So we got Colorado Springs in the house. We've got Knoxville in the house, Illinois, St. Louis. I don't know who else is around, but any suggestions? What do you want to see other than the Lois's fly? I showed that yesterday. Let me see if I can switch my camera back. Any suggestions for next week's tying that we should do?
Oh boy.
I put nothing like putting you on the spot. You come back after 3 weeks and I put you on the spot, right?
No kidding.
So Lois, who's also in Colorado Springs, sent me a whole bunch of these. And when I first opened the box of it, I kept thinking, oh, wouldn't that be a blast to go through TSA with these in your bag? Because they look like the Halloween kind, and different things. But anyway, I did get these. I got them on a hook and they worked. So I did the hook dubbing, but then I almost ruined my bodkin because what I did was heat this up and I made this little channel in the bottom.
Oh.
And so I was able to, so I just heated this thing up and yeah, the first one, it actually hit my finger instead of the thing, but melted it in there and there goes the fly. And then I just dubbed lightly and then got it on there. And I was able to, it has enough, it's pliable enough that I was able to actually get my thread and anchor it on as well. And so it was kind of a fun, crazy one. And it did catch fish. I sent her a picture of fish. So
Oh my God.
I'm up for any challenge. I'm thinking that Halloween's like, we might be going crazy now, buying all the spider rings and everything else to use. We might have to, we're gonna be manufacturing our own things. And I dropped that on the floor tomorrow. So, when I come down to my tying room tomorrow, I'm gonna be like, crap, because it looks so real. So, all right, well, I'm out. I guess I'll come up with a plan unless you guys have some suggestions and we'll start talking more fish.
Take care, Amy. Thanks for having us here.
Thanks,
Thank
Amy.
You're
you.
welcome. See you guys.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Hey, Terry,
Yes.
Don Ayers is leaving
Florida.
Wednesday, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Haven't heard.
Huh?
I haven't heard the date.
He's leaving Wednesday, the 3rd, no, the 4th. He's leaving. And then He will be back here on the 18th. They're having a dinner tomorrow night, but there's no way in hell I'm gonna go into Texas Roadhouse for a dinner for Don.
Oh, yeah.
So when he comes back here on the 18th, to finalize his sale of his house, I'm gonna have Bill Kelly and Bill and Ken House. We're gonna come out to my place and probably barbecue some chicken and,
Wow, that'd be wonderful. I'd love to be invited.
okay. Okay, you can bring the steak.
Okay.
I just got back. I was up in Montana fly fishing.
Yeah. Ken filled me in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Mick wants to go home tonight, so let's let him go.
All right, Mick, we'll see ya.
All
Thanks,
right, you
Mick.
guys take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.